Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the In the Yard podcast brought to you by Collin and Braeden Cox. We're here on February 26th, Sunday night, and today we're going to be talking about the 49ers and the QB situation and also Daniel Jones winning more money than Patrick Mahomes. So I guess, Braeden, we can get right down to it. I don't know, but if I were you, I feel like I would not want to be in the 49ers situation regarding who's going to be the starting quarterback next year. I mean, I know some people may say it's a good problem to have, but I feel like having two quarterbacks in one system, and by two quarterbacks I mean Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, I would not want to be in a situation where two quarterbacks are competing for the same job. It just never really works out most of the time. But yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on what would you do in this situation, or not what would you do, but like how are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very unique situation. I can't remember ever a situation quite like this where a team went through, I say three quarterbacks because, the quarterback that came in was Josh Jackson, came in the NFC Championship game. That game was like, as soon as Purdy was gone, like you kind of figured. It was like, it's going to be very hard for them to have a shot here, right? It's a very unique situation because, Garoppolo, we'll start with Garoppolo, right? Garoppolo, Bill Belichick product, and then went over to San Francisco, and he took the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl, right? Like, that's like his biggest pro. Is this guy has kind of been there, done that. He didn't win the game, but you could, in the fourth quarter, they were up 2 scores. You know what I mean? So, it was a fantastic team that year, again, Kyle Shanahan and all that. But, he's been there, done that. But then the second quarterback, Trey Lance, is like, you guys traded up to get this guy. You know what I mean? And a lot of people were high on him. A lot of people were, low on him. He's through his second full year, and this year was kind of a scratch because he had that season-ending injury. But there's obviously a future there because you traded up to get him. It's like if you trade up to go and get somebody, especially a quarterback, you're essentially saying to the rest of the league, we're going to build around this guy, right? And then there's the Brock Purdy story where Garoppolo and Trey Lance both get hurt. And then Brock Purdy, this rookie, Mr. Relevant, last pick in the draft from Iowa State, comes in and lights it up. And there's a lot of, you could say that he was a product of the Kyle Shanahan offense, that he really wasn't this insane gunslinger or anything. But to me, that doesn't really matter because he only lost one game, the NFC Championship game. He got hurt. It's I think he went 8-1 or 9-1, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of teams in there where he beat up on a not so good Tampa. They beat Washington, and then when they got in the playoffs, they played Seattle, Geno Smith, and not taking anything away from Geno, but it's and then Dak Prescott, which we could have an episode or two where I could just talk about Dak Prescott. But yeah, I mean if you were to ask me who I think they should go with, they basically already ruled out Garoppolo. He's gone.
Yeah.
Don't know where he's going. Mm-hmm. Don't know where he's going. That's going to be a very interesting story to watch because I think that he is still a starter in this league for sure. Mm-hmm. I think, in the right situation, he could definitely take a team pretty deep in the playoffs.
And if our viewers want to know where Jimmy Garoppolo, or where we think Jimmy Garoppolo is going, you could always look back on episode 2. We talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So really, to me, if we're going to talk about do we go with Trey Lance or Brock Purdy, it's so tough. It's honestly one of the hardest, if you want to talk anything football right now, that's probably the hardest question to answer.
Yeah. Right.
Because you traded up for Trey Lance, but now Brock Purdy looks fantastic. And yeah, he got that hurt. He got that injury. He's going to be out probably until the beginning of next season. Or I don't know exactly when he's supposed to come back. But if
I
it's
think
me,
UCL is probably
they said like 6 months.
6 months, so it'll be close.
July,
Maybe not be ready for opening day.
Yeah.
But Braeden, does this remind you? Do you see similarities between this situation and the Tom Brady and Drew Bledsoe situation in 2004, whatever it was?
Yes and no. I think just because, we're talking about, and it's a tough question to answer because like I was so young when that happened. The whole
That's true,
the Bledsoe and Tom
Right.
Brady thing. But I totally get the resemblance here.
Yeah, we were both 4.
Yeah, the big thing here is you've got Trey Lance and you've got Brock Purdy, who are both very young. You know what I mean? Like you could sit here and you can go either way if you're San Francisco. You could be okay, we're gonna build around Trey Lance because we traded up to get this guy. Or you could be like, well, look what Brock Purdy did. He basically took us to the NFC Championship game this year. So it's a tough question to answer. Are you asking me what I think they're gonna do?
Not quite yet. So I just wanted to give some input on, the Kyle Shanahan era of the 49ers, right?
Sure.
So overall, Kyle Shanahan, he has been with the 49ers head coach since 2017, right? 58-49 record overall, including the playoffs. And this year, the defense has allowed the fewest points per game and the fewest yards per game in the 2022 season, right? So obviously the coaching system is there, right? And, in 2017 when Kyle Shanahan first started, 6-10 regular season, missed playoffs. Okay, Kyle Shanahan's first season, whatever, right? And that was also when Jimmy G was their primary passer. In 2018, kind of the similar situation, 4-12 regular season, missed playoffs, and Nick Mullins was their primary passer at starting QB. I forget exactly how many games he played that year.
I remember that year, though. I do remember that year.
Yeah, so he was in there for a majority of the games, right?
Yeah, there was a game in there where I think it was like a Monday night where Green Bay was visiting San Francisco and it came down. Green Bay won by like a field goal, but it came down to it, and I was like, I mean, we're going to the wire with Nick Mullins here, like.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's primetime game. It's always gonna be a battle. But anyway, 2019 season under Kyle Shanahan, 13-3 regular season, lost in the Super Bowl to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and Jimmy G was your starting QB, right?
Yeah.
And then in 2020, 6-10 regular season, missed playoffs. Nick Mullins was the starting QB again. Did Jimmy G go down that year? Do you remember?
Yeah, that year was weird. I remember that was a hiccup for them because they went to the Super Bowl the year before, and then I think it was just like it was just a scratch season. Like it was just like too many injuries, too much was going on. It was like, what I mean, they basically shut it down.
Right. And then in 2021, 10-7 regular season, squeaked into the playoffs, right? But they ended up making it to the NFC Championship game and lost to the future Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams, right?
Yep.
And Jimmy G, again, was your starting quarterback that brought you to the NFC Championship game. And they almost won that. I feel like they should have won that game.
The game you're talking about against the Rams.
Yeah, the NFC Championship.
Yeah, that was right down to the wire too.
Right,
and the thing that was really impressive, and my Packers lost to the 49ers that year. But that team, like, I was rooting for them because I was like, I wanted to see, to be completely honest with you, I wanted to see San Francisco and Cincinnati in the Super Bowl. I thought that would have been so fun. Cincinnati still got there, but no, you're absolutely right. Like that game, that was a good game. I remember that NFC Championship game in 2020, 2021, 22 season.
And then the following year, this year, 2022, 13-4 regular season after, like, I think it was a 1-4 start, wasn't it? Or
Well, they were a
maybe
mess
2 and
because
4.
that was because Trey Lance got hurt week 2 and then Garoppolo took over and then he got hurt in like week 9 or 10.
Right.
And then Brock Purdy came in.
So Jimmy Garoppolo brought you a majority of your wins in the past 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons, right? And now he's gone. They made it clear that he's going elsewhere, and they're gonna probably either stick with Purdy or Trey Lance. Because I mean, I kind of get it. Because one thing that's worse than having 2 QBs compete for a job is having 3 QBs compete for a job. So I could see why they're parting ways with Jimmy G, even though he's the one that has brought them to their, to all these runs the past 4 seasons, and then the 2019 season. But yeah, I just feel like it's a tough spot for the 49ers now, because I think if I was the 49ers, I would still choose Jimmy G over, this might be a hot take, but I would still take Jimmy G over Purdy and Lance, especially with now the experience that he has. He doesn't turn the ball over, and I think we said it a couple episodes ago. I just think he's underrated as a quarterback. And
I agree.
Might be the Kyle Shanahan system, but still, like he gets his job. He gets the job done. Barely lost in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Barely lost in the NFC Championship game against the Rams. Yep. And then obviously this year he couldn't play. He didn't play all playoffs, and Brock Purdy was fine. But like you were saying before, he didn't really play anyone. He played the Seahawks. I mean,
and he played the Cowboys. The Cowboys were the best team that he beat.
Yeah, and the he struggled against the Cowboys.
He didn't play out of his mind against the Cowboys. He played very well against Seattle. Slow start, but he played well against Seattle. He didn't play terrible against Dallas. He just didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't light it up.
He didn't light it up. I mean, you keep going.
No, I was just gonna say that I agree with what you're saying about Garoppolo in the sense that like he's been there, done that. The reason why I think you go with Trey Lance because here's the way I look at it, right? You're letting Garoppolo go. Like, you've made that clear. You've made that business decision, right? Basically, the 49ers are in a position where Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, you traded up for Trey Lance. So the obvious answer here is to go with Trey Lance. The problem is we don't really know. Like, you can't really definitively say, like, this guy can play. Like, we can kind of say that Brock Purdy can play. Maybe it was, like, beginner's luck, but that's some beginner's luck he had, right? I understand why you move on from Jimmy G, but I get what you're saying about, like, he's kind of been there, done that. So, in theory, like, that makes the most sense. Is like, well, he's brought you to a Super Bowl. He's brought you to the NFC Championship game. Like, when he's been healthy, you've been in the NFC Championship game or better the past, like, 4 years. So it makes it makes perfect sense to be like, oh, well, you should go with Jimmy G. But now that you've traded up to get Trey Lance and now you got Brock Purdy, it's like you can kind of build around those. And that's still a good team. Like, you still got a good team that, like, you could go either with Brock Purdy or Trey Lance, but I think probably they're going to go with Trey Lance. I can't see them not because you traded up for him. If not, trade him. That's the way I look at it. And then build around Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I agree. So I was going to say earlier that obviously I think Jimmy G would be your best option. Like you said, he's been there, done that, but it's best for them to part ways. So yeah, then you're choosing between Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, who I'll read you some Trey Lance stats. So Trey Lance, 22 years old, right? 2022, 194 yards total, and it had a QB rating of 55. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, low sample size, went down with injury early in the season.
Yeah.
And then 2021, threw for 603 yards, 97.3 passer rating, which is okay, right? Not great, but good for a young QB, right? He was 20 years old at the time. 20 or 21. So.
Yeah, and he wasn't. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't really because Jimmy G was there.
Yeah.
If he was the day one starter and he was starting all, every game of the season, like his numbers would have obviously been better.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing is like, and you've kind of highlighted it just by saying those numbers. Yeah, he threw 194 and 603. He's thrown less than 1,000 yards in his career.
Mm-hmm. And then
I
was gonna say his career rating of 84.5 total, which is, and again, small sample size. Hasn't played many games. 22 years old. I think he's gonna be 23 soon, but
yeah.
But yeah. Anything else to add to that?
No, I mean, yeah, it's like I want to say you go with Trey Lance because you traded up to get him, but it's like,
yeah,
he's thrown for less than 1,000 yards in his career, and yes, he's been hurt, but that also says something. Like, is the guy injury prone? Like, is this something that we should roll
that's
with?
another thing.
And then Brock Purdy's got a serious injury too. Like, it's his elbow. Like, I think it's was it? I think it was his throwing arm too, right?
Yeah, that's why he couldn't play.
Yeah,
if it was a non-throwing arm,
that's true. He could have powered through it. Yeah, but that says something too. Is like, you don't know what his arm's going to look like going into training camp.
Yeah. So Brock Purdy again, he's 23 as compared to Trey Lance is 22. Years old. Obviously took over for Jimmy G in week 16 and started week 17. Went 4-1 total. And then, obviously, towards UCL and Eagles in the NFC Championship game. And that was pretty much it for the 49ers. And then, again, 109.8 passer rating in the postseason. Small sample size. Again, played the Seahawks, probably inflated his numbers a little bit. Played the Cowboys, which brought his numbers back down. And then played the Eagles, where he went down. So, again, small sample size.
Yeah.
And then his entire career, including the playoffs, 12 games, 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 107.3 career passer rating.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, it's just such a tough decision because both guys have such a small sample size. I feel like, they're both in their low 20s. They're not even 25 yet. And it's just really, really tough situation for the 49ers. But I agree with you. I think they have to stick with Trey Lance because I think you can see that Trey Lance has the talent. Well, it's just a question as whether he could stay on the field.
Yeah.
Similar to Lamar Jackson. Obviously, Lamar Jackson has more to his resume. But it's a similar situation to Lamar Jackson over there in Baltimore or wherever he's going to end up.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you got to go with Trey Lance, especially since you traded up and you want to build around him.
The only other thing I can really add to this is, like, you still got both these guys on rookie contracts, right? You keep them both, right? I say you put Trey Lance out there, and if he starts, like, if he's not playing well, then you put Purdy in. Like, you have a good second option in there, right? And then that way they can kind of duke it out. And say that kind of situation happens where they start Trey Lance, he plays like 5-6 games and he plays not well, then I say you put Brock Purdy in there. And then that kind of helps you make that decision, because if Brock Purdy goes out there again next year and plays like, he doesn't even need to play to the level he played this year. Like, if he goes out there and he wins games and he plays like well, right? Yeah. Then I think
similar to how Jimmy G has played all this time.
Yeah, then I think the decision becomes easy. I think if Trey Lance does not play well, you go with Brock Purdy, and if Brock Purdy like plays pretty well, then you trade Trey Lance. I think it's that simple, because you don't want to pay him. You don't want to, you got them both on rookie contract. You don't want to have to pay both these guys.
Right.
So you got to figure it out. You got to figure it out they got to figure it out this season. Because that's when they're going to start having contract negotiations.
Purdy, another reason to go Trey Lance is because of this UCL injury that Brock Purdy has.
Yep.
I do think I read that Trey Lance will be ready for OTAs come the summertime.
Yep.
And Brock Purdy, obviously UCL, 6 months at least, and who knows if he'll ever be able to throw the football the same again.
That's true.
So I think they have to build their system on Trey Lance for now. And then I know you said if he does bad or struggles, then you can put in Brock Purdy. But here's the problem with that. I feel like whenever a quarterback is on a short leash like that, right? And I know it's the NFL. I know it could happen anywhere, whether you're
Aaron
Rodgers or Tom Brady. Yeah, they went on a short leash. They don't make the same plays. But I understand that, pressure. You had to overcome a lot of pressure just to even make it to this stage, So I kind of see that. But yeah, I feel like whenever a quarterback is on a short leash competing for a spot, right, as if Trey Lance were to go out week 1 and start, it never really works out. And then you're flipping a coin between who's going to start every single week by the week 12. So I don't know. It's just a tough decision for the 49ers to be in.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I'm very excited to see how that all develops. I'm excited to see where Jimmy G goes, and I'm very excited to see, because I everything I've seen on Trey Lance. I watched him a little bit when he was at North Dakota State. He plays well. Like he seems like he could be the guy. But Purdy, out of nowhere again, seems like he could be the guy too. So it'll definitely be interesting how it all plays out.
Yeah, and another thing, like obviously all they need is a quarterback that plays well. Obviously, you saw that in Jimmy G because their defense obviously is going to be good year in and year out.
Yeah.
They've proved that since 2018 or
that,
not 2018.
That's a great point. That's a great point. You don't have to go out there and be the superhero.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo essentially is a great game manager. He goes out there and he doesn't make mistakes. He just does what he has to do. He doesn't do anything crazy. They never ask him to be Superman, right? I think Purdy would fit perfectly in that role. Trey Lance, I think, could even take it to another level.
Right.
But yeah, that team's so talented, everywhere, lines, weapons, You don't have to be. You don't need an Aaron Rodgers, but if you go, obviously, if you go with an Aaron Rodgers on that team, it'd be special. But
yeah, here's another thought that just popped in my head. I just feel like I still think they got to stick with Trey Lance for now as a starting QB, but I feel like in the long run, if they went with Purdy, he would be more consistent
than Trey Lance.
Because I feel like I'm seeing Trey Lance as a guy who, similar to Justin Fields, will have his highs, but will also have his down games. He'll have his high games, he'll have his down games. But I feel like Brock Purdy might be a little more consistent in that starting QB role, especially in the Kyle Shanahan system. And like we were just saying, he'll be able to just play well enough, score enough points, and let the defense do the rest. Yeah. But again, I think Trey Lance, I think he has a lot of potential. I think Trey Lance's ceiling is higher, but I think Brock Purdy will be more consistent.
Might be a better fit in the 49ers.
Yeah.
That's totally fair. It's almost like you think that Trey Lance's ceiling is higher than Brock Purdy's, but Purdy fits into the system better. Thus, Purdy might be the better quarterback.
Yeah.
Again,
but then again,
I think that's a very valid point.
Yeah, but then again, Trey Lance is still only 22 years old, so I feel like it's way too early to tell.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're both. I'm pretty sure we're both older than these guys.
Yeah,
which is crazy to think about, but.
Well, Brock Purdy is a year older than us, and Trey Lance is younger than us.
Okay.
Trey Lance is still 22, and I turn 23 next month, so I think if he's not younger than me, he's very close.
Yeah, we're right. We're right with it with these guys.
We're right there, just along with the rest of the league. We're getting there. Yeah. But yeah, another tough decision tough situation for the Niners there. I'm curious to see as what path they're going to take regarding the Trey Lance, Brock Purdy situation.
Absolutely, because that's a Super Bowl. That's a Super Bowl team.
Yeah, of course.
That's an NFC. That's definitely a team in the NFC that can go out there and win the conference. So it's it's a huge decision. Especially
in the weaker NFC, you have the Eagles, you have the Niners, and then maybe a sleeper team like the Lions this year, which we may talk about in another episode. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that wraps it up for our Trey Lance, Brock Purdy talks. Me and you both think they're gonna have to go with Trey Lance. Yeah. For now, and then see how it goes.
Yeah.
And then I guess that'll bring us to our Daniel Jones discussion.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about Danny Dimes.
We'll talk about that for just a little bit. Running a little bit of time here. So yeah, I'm sure as many of you have heard now, Daniel Jones reportedly wants $45 million per year, and I'm seeing some reports now that these rumors are not true, but we're gonna talk about it like they are, because it brings for a better discussion. Right, Bray?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so as far as this whole story about him wanting $45 million a year, I get it's the market. And before everyone freaks out, like, I understand this is the quarterback market, that these dudes are going to get paid between $40 and $50 million a year. And they may not, like, you may not look at them and be like, wow, like, they should make near as much as someone like Pat Mahomes. And I think Daniel Jones is one of those guys. I think $45 million a year for a guy that has really only had one semi-decent year is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, Daniel
To
Jones
me-
wins one playoff game, then thinks he's Tom Brady all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, the thing that doesn't make sense to me is, like, it's not like, and I get it, the Giants were not a good team his first whatever years was there, right? And this year, the Giants, they got Brian Dable in there. Saquon was healthy the whole year. You know, they had players, like, they played well together. They were a good team this year. They weren't a great team. They were a good team this year. You know, they went into Minnesota in the playoffs, beat up on a team that I think was probably the most overrated playoff team I've seen, like, in a very long time in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as soon as I saw that matchup, like, it was Giants at Minnesota, I was like, the Giants are going to win this game. I was like, and there was a lot of people who thought that, and you would think, like, Minnesota's at home. They look at their record, like, they should have no problem with the Giants. And a lot of people were just like, yeah, it's good, the Giants are going to win this game. And they did.
Yeah.
Obviously, they ran into Philadelphia, which just, you know, all in all is a better team.
That's another thing, though. But, like, if he wants that much money, you don't go to Philadelphia and lose by 35 points. Or whatever it was, 20. I mean, I know Philadelphia had a much better team.
Yeah,
but you got at least got to make it. That game was over in the first quarter. You got to make it a game. You know?
I agree, but to me, it's not even that. It's like, yeah, the Giants were bad, but, like, he has had one good year. Like, I don't have his stats up here, but, like, this was a year where he was a good quarterback.
Yeah,
What do you mean
you won
$45 million a year?
Yeah, this was his
do it again.
Do or die year. This was his do or die year. I think if he played poorly, they were going to have to move on from him. But he did step it up. He did step up this year. He made the plays, took the Giants to the playoffs for the first time in 5 years maybe? It's been a rough road for the Giants for a while.
Since that Super Bowl win, it's been rough. But no, 100%. I think. Listen, I like Daniel Jones. I think.
Yeah, so do I.
I think that he is a starting quarterback in the NFL, right?
For sure.
He could be the guy in New York. That's cool. That's fine by me, right? But I think $45 million a year right now is kind of a lot. To me, you don't give Daniel Jones, after one good year, like a 5-year, $200 million contract. Like, to me, he's not that guy. You probably go and you give him, like, if you want to give him, like, 40, I'd be like, okay, whatever. But, like, to me, you don't give him any more than, like, a 3-year deal. Because you don't know. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of knew with Pat Mahomes. When they gave him 10 years, $450 million a year, I think, with Pat Mahomes. Like, people looked at that and they were like...
It was $45 million a year for 10 years, so $450 total.
Yeah, and people looked at that and they were like, holy cow, like, that's ridiculous money. Like, no player in the NFL should get paid that kind of money, and, like, it's already paying off. Like, they've won 2 Super Bowls.
Patrick Mahomes can because he's Patrick Mahomes and he already has.
There are certain guys in the NFL, like people like Patrick Mahomes, that you give that money to, no problem, because they've kind of proven themselves, and, you know, I hate to say that they deserve that kind of money, because, you know, anybody who gets paid $45 million a year to do anything, to me, is ridiculous. But I get it. But Patrick Mahomes, like, you looked at that contract and you're like, well, yeah, he probably is the best quarterback in the NFL. You know what I mean? You don't look at Daniel Jones and think that at all. It's like the same kind of thing that happened a few years ago with Dak. Like, I understood why they paid him. Like, they're probably going to have to pay him again. But I was like, to me, it's like, you got to prove yourself. You really got to prove yourself to get that kind of money. To me, if you're the Giants, you re-sign him, right? But you don't give him, like, some crazy max contract. Like, if you want to give him 35, 40, $1 million a year over 3 years, I think that's acceptable. But like, I don't know how you can give someone like Daniel Jones a 5-year contract after just being good for really 1 year.
Yeah. Here's the thing, Braeden.
Give the money to Saquon, because he to me is someone who can really elevate the New York Giants.
That's an interesting take. I know just because running backs don't usually get paid nearly as much as quarterbacks.
Well, I'm not saying pay him like that kind of money, but I'm saying if you're gonna focus on re-signing or extending,
you're saying like
Daniel Jones
get
or
running
Saquon,
back and then revamp their O-line or something like that.
I think you start with Saquon.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm
not saying don't pay Daniel Jones. I'm not saying don't pay Daniel Jones. I'm just saying, like, you should be focused on Saquon, because Saquon's that guy. Like, you know, you give him a massive contract, and I think like you'll definitely get your money's worth. But Daniel Jones, you don't really know that.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I was gonna say run a little low on time here, so try to wrap this up in a little bit. But yeah, the QB market now is just insane. Obviously, you have Deshaun Watson's contract, and then if in comparison, Patrick Mahomes' contract is nothing. If you look at the resumes and you look at the total guaranteed money, right? Absolutely nothing, because Deshaun Watson has done nothing for anyone. He lost to Patrick Mahomes in, what was it, 2019, right? He blew a 21-0 lead to Patrick Mahomes in the wild card game, I think.
Yep.
It was a wild card divisional.
I know. I remember that game.
So yeah, I just feel like it's mind-boggling for anyone. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Joe Burrow. I don't care if you're Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. I just feel like it's crazy that they're asking for more money than Patrick Mahomes. Looking at the resumes, right? Because Patrick Mahomes is clearly, like we talked about in episode 3, I think, clearly the best quarterback in the league now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So for other quarterbacks to be asking for more money, wouldn't they want to take a pay cut at least and maybe, try to beat him? As much as I love Joe Burrow, I don't think he should be getting paid more than Mahomes. I know he's 3-1 against Mahomes, but Mahomes has 2 rings, right?
No.
And I understand that Joe Burrow completely turned the Cincinnati franchise around. But I feel like he can get paid as much as Mahomes. I feel like he deserves to get paid as much, but asking for more, I feel like would just be like a little greedy, just considering it's going to be tough to keep Jamar, it's going to be tough to keep T. Higgins, it's going to be tough to, keep all their defensive guys that they drafted his year. So
yeah.
So I don't know. I just feel like as a competitor, you should want to take a little bit of a pay cut. I don't know. I know I'm not the player. I know these guys don't do that, but I just feel like if you want to beat Mahomes, you got to take a pay cut, and that might be what it takes to finally beat him.
And the thing about Mahomes' contract is it's a very smart contract, because obviously they knew like this guy he's the franchise. Like no questions, like they knew he was going to be the franchise.
They got him before the QB market spike. They got him.
It happened. It was a perfect storm for them the way it happened, right? He's got probably the best contract of any quarterback in the NFL. And he's the best quarterback, which is like it's like OP at that point. It's like, well, he's got the best contract and he's the best quarterback. So it's like they can still put weapons around him. They can still go get people. Look, they got rid of Tyreek Hill. They moved on. They would have had to pay Tyreek Hill. And what happened? They won the Super Bowl. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that kind of stuff matters, but I agree with you, I look at a player like, obviously you mentioned a few names. You said Burrow, you said Josh Allen, you said Justin Herbert. Like, these guys are going to get paid, right? But we can agree that it would be smart for Joe Burrow to go to Cincinnati Bengals ownership and be like, hey, listen, like, go get me DeAndre Hopkins. You know what I mean? Just hypothetically. Go get me this. Go pay him. I'll make my money in endorsements.
And I do think Joe Burrow feels that way.
Which, that's what you want. That's what you really want
as a player. As a fan, for sure. Might be a little
biased.
I don't know. I'm hoping, obviously, talks are Joe Burrow is going to reach an extension in a couple weeks, hopefully. So we'll see how that pans out and then what they'll do with the rest of the contract.
Yep. Well, I think we're almost out of time here.
Yeah, I think that wraps it up. You got anything else to say, Braeden?
No, I got nothing. This was a great episode. This was definitely cool to talk about the 49ers. It'd be interesting, and it'd be very interesting to see what the New York Giants do, because I just don't want to see the Giants go and do something rash and then it kind of blows up on them. So,
all right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This is the In the Yard podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thank you. See you next time.